Hey, everybody. Welcome to another segment of. Somebody told me to call this Crane Talks, but then I heard they put it in the machine wrong, and it was called Coin Talks. Coin Talks. Oh, that's interesting because I like talking about how money affects things. But my good friend Eugene asked me to talk about something that I just read about the last day. It was kind of upsetting, but it actually ties into this issue I was talking about with race and officiating. And let me tell you this story that I came across. It was online. It might have been YouTube. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was LinkedIn. But I was reading about this story, and let me just tell you a little bit how this story operated. So a black man, let's just say he was 35 to 40 years old. I don't remember his age, and I'm roughly paraphrasing this story, but I remember it because it hit me deep, and I was thinking about it this morning. So this man, this American man who happens to be black, was driving his SUV, and he had his 5-year-old daughter in the back seat. And of course, she was black, and he's driving, and he's got to go through this affluent neighborhood. And as he's driving through the neighborhood, he's saying to himself, all right, keep moving. You know how things are around here. Keep moving. Don't stop. And it's really, really hot outside at the time, but he's just thinking, let me just get through this neighborhood and get to my daughter's, I think he had to take her to a dance recital or something. So as he's moving through the neighborhood, he sees on the side of the road this little white kid who's maybe 3 years old, 2 or 3 years old, and he's like, why is this kid out here by himself? And the kid is about to step out, he's getting dangerously close to the street, and he's thinking, that's not good. And he's looking around, he doesn't see any parents, doesn't see any adults, and he's thinking, well, don't get involved because you got to keep it moving. You don't know what might happen. So he kept driving, and he said as he got down a couple blocks, his paternal instincts kicked in. He thought, I've got to. He said, what if something happens to this kid and I hear about it in the news, I'm gonna feel terrible. Turns back around, reluctantly goes back, parks his vehicle, maybe, I don't know, a few yards from where the kid was. He sees the kid still out there, parks his vehicle, leaves the air conditioning on, high blast for his daughter, leaves the door open, and he goes to the kid's rescue. When he gets to the kid, he says he doesn't want to startle the kid, so he says, hey, little fella, how you doing? The kid just giggles, he says, hey, you might want to move away from the street. That's not good. And he said the kid just took it as playful, and so he starts going towards the street, like, chase me. And then he said he looks up, and as the kid is about to step in the street, he looks up, and there, story, I don't know if this is a real story or if it's made up, but bear with me. So he sees a box truck coming down the street, big delivery truck, and going faster than it should in a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood. And he looks up and he sees the driver who appears to be distracted because the driver's looking down for whatever reason, whether it's his phone or a map or whatever. And he said he sees this in an instant. He realizes this kid is about to step out in the street and this box truck, and it's going to probably run over him. So he said instinctively, he just reaches out, steps down and grabs the kid, and the kid is giggling because he thinks it's a game, and he's giggling, and he pulls the kid back, pulls him back to safety. He watches the box truck go by, and then he's sitting there talking to the kid, kneeling down, saying, you okay, little buddy? And the kid's giggling like, yeah, that's fun, let's do it again. 2 or 3-year-old kid doesn't know anything, so he's just oblivious to what's going on. He said he just, holding the kid, make sure and he looks around and he sees a white mom coming at him. Apparently it's her son, and she's screaming, what are you doing? Get your hands off my son. What are you doing? You're trying to steal my son. And he goes, ma'am, I was trying to, you're scared, but I don't want to hear any of it. Give him back. And he says, okay, ma'am, here. He hands the kid to him and said, ma'am, I was just rolling by and I saw, I'm going to call the police. You're trying to kidnap my son. He goes, kidnap your son? What are you talking about? Your child was out here and he was, I don't want to hear it. Shut up. I'm calling the police. And oh my gosh. And she's screaming. And he realizes that she's frantic. So he said the thought went through his mind, let me just get in my vehicle and go about my business before the police get here because this is getting crazy. And he said he realized in his mind if he did that, he would look guilty. So he says, well, I really don't have any choice. I'm going to have to stay here and try to explain this to the cops. Well, he said within a short period of time, like maybe 3 minutes, cops pulled up. 2 or 3 cruisers pulled up. And he said they didn't just pull up investigating because she had called the police. They pulled up and they jumped out of their cars with hands on weapons. He said they weren't drawn, because he didn't look like he had a weapon, but they had their hands on their guns and they were saying, "Get down on the ground." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And they, "Shut up and get on the ground." And he was livid. He's going, "I didn't do anything. Get on the ground now," he said. And then their guns were starting to come out of their holsters. And of course, all the police officers just happened to be white. And he said that the story goes, and I get emotional because being a man who a man who happens to be black in America, I can relate to this. And some people might say, "Oh, this never happened to you." Something similar did happen to me. That's why I can relate to it. And a lot of the work that I've done over the years has been advocacy for young black American males in grade school, middle school, and high school, and now in college. So yes, these kind of stories do happen every day of our lives. And I'm going to tie this back into officiating, but to finish the story, the cops were yelling at him to get on the ground. And they're getting more aggressive, and he's trying to explain to them, "I was just trying to," and they didn't want to hear it. And the lady's screaming, "He tried to kidnap my son, arrest him, take him away, lock him up." And the officers were listening to her. So they were telling him, get out on the ground. So he finally said, "Well, I better get on there." So he gets down on the ground. Remember, it's really, really hot outside. He's in the street, and this pavement, he said, the story said, when he laid down, he could feel the heat coming through his clothes. And once he laid down, of course, the officers were on top of him, knee in his back, pressing his face into this hot pavement. And he said they had him turn towards his SUV. And at that point, he's looking and he sees this little girl who has opened the door, standing on the edge of the vehicle, looking out with tears in her eyes. And he said that's what made him have a tear, not everything that's going on, but the fact that his daughter was watching him, her daddy, her hero, her number one man in the world, being reduced to, back in slavery days. Of course, she didn't know anything about that, but she's watching her father be reduced to less than a human by all these people, and she knows her daddy. She knows that he told her, "Let me go help this little boy." She said, "Okay, Daddy." And that's all he was doing. He saved this white mom's son from probably imminent death. And this is how he gets treated by her, who's making assumptions, by the police officers who made assumptions based on her assumptions. And this is America. This is America. Now, there's a lot of things good in America. There's a lot of things right in America. But being a man in America who happens to be black, there's a lot of things in America that aren't right. And I just, heard on the news where the president, number 47, is making claims that Iran is in talks with America. And I read another article where Iran they're denying any of that happened. They said, "We're not talking to your president at all." So why would he make that up? People that follow him and are in favor of him will say, "He's not making it up, they're lying. It's just fake news." That is one of their favorite statements to make. This is America. This is America. Still, 2026. And we're dealing with racial issues. I've got friends that come from other countries. My good friend Eugene, who's from Botswana, and my pastor, who's from Nigeria. And I can get along with just about anybody. Anybody who can tolerate my crazy self, I can get along with it, just about anybody. And my friends from outside the country, my friends from other parts of the country will say things like, like some of my friends who are from other parts of the world, they say, "We don't get it." I'm going, what do you mean? We just, and when we get into these deep conversations, they say, we really don't understand what's the big deal with racism in America. We're starting to see it more. We just don't. Why is there so much emphasis on the color of a person's skin here? We don't understand it. And I tell them, I said, well, look, I grew up with it. And in America, to say that's just the way it is, unfortunately, that's the way it is. But you got to understand, this country was built on the color issue. They go, what do you mean? People that look like me were forced to come here. We were forced to come and work. Not me. I didn't have to go through that, but my great-great-grandfather Wash Hearn, short for Washington Hearn, who hailed out of Arkansas. My father's so proud of him because Wash Hearn was an ex-slave who happened to somehow, I don't know the story, but he got his hands on several acres of land and he deeded it, or I guess passed it down to the generations. And so now me and my sister own several acres of land down in Southern America. And we've gone down there, we're looking at the land, trying to figure out what to do with it. But, you know, I look at the history of my background, my family, and I hail from people who had to go through slavery. And that's why I think about diligently, I think about the race issue in this country, because it's a real thing, folks. And I tell my friends from outside the country, they say, well, we don't understand. Why is it such a big deal? And I said, well, to be honest with you, Black Americans, it's not a big deal with us, but we have to deal with that on a regular basis. Every day I wake up, I realize that I'm a man who happens to be Black living in America, and there's an issue. If you look at, and I was reading this book, and Dr. Claude Anderson says, Black Americans own less than 0.5% of anything of value in this nation. Think about that. We own less than 0.5% of anything of value in this nation. And when I hit young people with that, they go, oh, I don't know about that. I said, well, you're probably thinking about the stars that stand out in sports, the stars that stand out in entertainment, and the stars that stand out in rap music, and maybe even some people who stand out criminally. And they go, yeah. I said, yeah. But if you look at percentage-wise, there's what, 43 million Black Americans? I don't know the number. But if you look at percentage-wise, how many people do you know personally know who are wealthy? And they go, well, nobody. And if I talk to 1,200 of you guys in this room, probably 1,193 are going to say that same thing. We don't know anybody personally who's wealthy. And I said, look at every industry that we're leading the way in terms of being consumers. Those industries are sports. We spend more going to sporting events. Cars. We love to buy expensive cars. We do a lot of things with our hair, makeup, do a lot of things to make our appearance improved. Alcohol. We buy a lot of alcohol. And I said, if you look at the areas that we lead in terms of being consumers, how many of those industries do we own? And when I ask that question, most of them look at me and go, well, look at Tyler Perry. I say, that's one person. Oh, look at Oprah Winfrey. That's two people. And then they'll name 4 or 5 others. I say, okay, that's probably what, 8 people. How many of those people in the industries that they work in, how many of them own something within the industry? And we can only usually name about 4 or 5 people. That means we don't own the majority share of those industries, but we are one of the highest, if not the highest, consumer group to support those industries. And Eugene and I were just talking about money, and you know, I talk a lot about money, and that's something that I want to help young people understand. I don't know all the answers, but I read a lot of things about money and finances, especially to do with people who happen to be Black Americans. And the thing about it, the Bible, some of you guys may not follow the Bible. I do. I'm a professed follower of Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And one of the things that I always keep in mind, Eugene and I were just talking about that, money. And I would ask most people, does the Bible say money is the root of all evil? And most people say, yeah. And I go, are you sure? Yeah, Crane, you read the Bible, you should know that. I know, but I'm asking you, does the Bible say money is the root of all evil? Are you absolutely positive? They go, yes. I did this with my son years ago. And he was a very, very staunch follower of the Bible. Read it diligently, more than Dad. So I asked him that question. I said, Reggie, are you sure? He goes, yeah. I said, are you positive? Absolutely. So are you absolutely convinced? He goes, Dad, you used to do that with me as a kid all the time. Are you sure? Are you positive? Are you absolutely convinced? Yes, I'm sure. Yes, I'm positive. Yes, I'm absolutely convinced. The Bible says money is the root of all evil. I said, no. Yes, it is, Dad. I said, well, look it up. So we go to James. I think it's Timothy, 1 Timothy, I believe. See, I don't know where it is for sure, but I could look it up. So we go to the Bible and we look it up. And I said, read it. He'd read it. And it says, the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. I said, so again, Reggie, I'm going to ask you, does the Bible say that money is the root of all evil? And he goes, wow, no, I forgot that part. Exactly. Satan has a way of mixing things up to help us forget pertinent parts of God's word. So why did I bring all this up? Because when I go back to Black Americans and I look at a lot of our problems, a lot of it can be solved with money, a lot of it. But at the same time, the root of that individual, money cannot solve the problems surrounding the root of that individual. If you look at money as what's the word I'm looking for? Help me, folks. If you look at money as as you worship it, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you for reminding me. So if we worship money and we look, that's the word I was looking for, is idol. See, you guys, we're connected. You help a brother. So idol. If you look upon money as your idol, you look upon it as your God, if you worship money, that's what that verse means. Okay? The love of money. Because God said, you know, love the Lord with all your God, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. And the second commandment is like unto it. Love your brother as yourself. You love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments, all the law is written and hangs on these two commandments. Well, basically what that comes down to, and these are just the basic things that I do know. Money, if you really want to know what's going on in an industry, if you really want to know what's going on in the world, follow the money, and that will tell you what's going on. Because at the end of that road that you're following, you'll discover people who love money more than they love mankind. And I remember listening to some of what I call my millionaire mentors, Myron Golden, who's online, and he says he has learned that a lot of people they will love money and use people. And that goes back to that phrase I just said, the love of money is the root of all evil. And he says what he's learned to do is to use money to love people. And I always thought that's a very profound way to look at life. So when I look at myself, who's a man who happens to be a Black American in America, I say to myself, I want to be a steward of a lot of money for God. I do. I want to steward a lot of money for the kingdom of God. Because there's two kingdoms. There's the kingdom of Satan and there's the kingdom of God. So I have to make sure I mention that. I want to steward a lot of money for the kingdom of God. And more importantly, he has to know that I'm ready to handle that kind of stewardship. And once he knows it, then he will train me or put in me what I need to be able to handle that stewardship. How does all this go back to Black Americans as well as sports? And this is the way I see things. You may disagree, and that's fine, because you may be able to educate me to some things. But when I talk to young people, I like to talk to them this way, just to get people to think. Because Americans don't think, especially Black Americans. Our big problem is we don't think. And that's just, Earl Nightingale, dead long ago, one of my millionaire mentors, I listened to him quite a bit. But he said the problem with most men is they simply don't think. So I've learned how to think, meaning I'll contemplate. I'll look at other people's opinion. I'll read other people's versions of how they discern what has been talked about or what is in before them. And what I've seen with Black Americans is we tend to not think. And when it comes down to race issues, a lot of my white friends don't think. And I'll give you a prime example. Our current president, number 47. I remember watching a video of him years ago where he was being interviewed by Oprah Winfrey. And he was on screen and on stage, and the crowd was chanting, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. And they were saying, Trump for president. He was like, no, no, no. And they just kept chanting, and Oprah Winfrey is laughing. She goes, they obviously want you to be president. He goes, I'm not interested in politics. And not at all. He said, that's boring stuff. And I don't know how long this ago. He was pretty young when he said this. And she said, okay, but if you did, he says, I'd never run for president. She said, but if you did, how would he said, you have to worry about it. I'm not interested. I would never, no, that's crazy. And she said, okay. All that aside, just playfully, if you did run for president, which party would you represent? And he goes, well, And I'm roughly paraphrasing because I don't remember. I just remember the segment, and it was interesting. He says, "Well," he said, "I'll tell you this: if I'm not interested in running, I would never run. But if I did, I'd run Republican." And she goes, "Why?" And he goes, basically, Republicans they don't think for themselves. They're stupid. Whatever I tell them to do, they'll do. They just don't think for themselves. I could just tell them to do this, and they do it. Once they're beholden to the person that's in their lead of their party, they'll do whatever he says. And that's why I would run Republican. And she goes, "Wow." And he goes, "Yeah." Now, I never forgot that. Then when I heard the man was running for president, his first term, I was like, boom. And he's running Republican? Something's not right here. I don't get it. Have other people not seen this segment? That's what I was thinking. And the man won. Then he came back, and Biden, I guess, beat him the second time, and he came back and won again. And my mind went back to that Oprah Winfrey segment. I'm going, this man just called these people stupid. He just said that they would do anything that he tells them to do as long as they're behind him. And now he's doing it. And they're following him. And now some people, MAGA supporters or whomever, are recanting because they're going, oh, we don't like what he's doing. You get what you get. Like my wife used to say to our daughter, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. God says that in the Bible. I think it was King Saul, or I think I got it. You Bible not knowledge people out there would know who I'm talking about. But when I think it was Israel, or when they wanted a king, and I'm probably messing this all up. My pastor's going to chastise me later for this, but I do remember the gist of the story. And they wanted to be like all the other nations around them. I think it was the Israelites who came out of Egypt, and they wanted a king. And the representative of them was saying, Lord, the prophet, who I forgot who he was, but he was saying, Lord, they want a king. They know you're their king. And God was saying, okay, yeah, right. And after a while, God says, well, go ahead and let them have a king. He says, no, Lord, you are a king. He says, no, but that's what they want. Give them what they want. And that's what's happening to America. They're slowly sliding. And when I say America, I'm talking about the people that support our current president. Slowly sliding into demise. Slowly. And it's like we are, and I say we because we're all one nation, we are slowly, and they say great nations always implode from within. And I'm just watching it happen. And people say, no, America's the greatest nation ever was. I don't know. I'm seeing what's going on in our nation. It's crazy. It's a major change and shift. And it seems like a lot of other nations in the world are against us. So how does this tie into officiating? Well, to finish the story about the young man who got arrested by police officers, that's as far as I read. And the police had him down, knee in his back, and hot pavement hot face on the face on the hot pavement. Daughter standing there watching it all, crying, and this lady over here screaming that he was trying to kidnap my son, when all this man was doing was saving her son. And what went through my mind is, where was this mom? Why is it that she comes running out after the man? Was that God's design? Was it irony? I mean, was it coincidence? What happened? Why did? And it could have just been a fictitious story. Let me sum that up. Let me add that in. But the bottom line is, when I look at situations like that, and I look at officiating, and when I'm on the court, and I've got a black team versus a white team, the black team, in their minds, they're going to beat anybody who's white because they're better athletes in their mind. The white team, we're going to beat this team because they think they're better than us, and blacks think they're better athletes, so we're going to beat them. I hate those kind of games. I hate those kind of games, because the kids are stuck in the middle. The parents are poisonous to the coaches. The coaches, if they're not strong, are poisonous to the kids. The kids don't know how to think for themselves, so they're poisonous to each other. Then they get on the court, and because I wear the black and white stripes, I'm the one in the middle who's keeping them from winning, when really my job is to make sure each team has an equal opportunity to win the game. That's my job as an official. I've been doing it over 30 years. It depends on who you ask whether I'm a good official or not. Some people say he's the greatest official there ever was. Some people say he sucks, we hate him. That's the black and white thing. That's why we wear black and white stripes. We're in the middle. And, the bottom line is make sure each team has an equal opportunity to win the game. That is my job. And when I have a game that's split between black families and white families, it's not fun. Anywhere from third grade to sixth grade, that's the worst grade to officiate. I mean, that's the worst level to officiate. And most officials would say that third through sixth grade, the parents and the grandparents are the absolute worst. Some of you folks out there don't know how to act. And I get it. Some of you guys have just not, I tell people, and people say you're making an excuse. Some of it is folks have just not been introduced to the culture of competitive sports at that age yet. They don't realize that little Martha is going to fall down and she might break a tooth out. And nobody's near her, but now just like that mom running out here, you want me to penalize somebody who's 10 feet away from little Martha for breaking her tooth because she tripped over that line that's painted on the floor because she's fourth grade and she doesn't know her body yet. But now you want me to send somebody to the stockade and tech them and throw them out of here because she fell. You want revenge. And you don't understand the culture of the game is basketball is a contact sport, folks. It's a contact sport. If you don't want little Martha to get hurt, let her play volleyball. Let her play billiards. Let her play chess. Basketball is a contact sport. And all contact is not a foul. There could be contact. Maybe they got there at the same time. Maybe they got there and little Martha went to shoot the ball and little Karen hit her. And, maybe it was marginal contact, but the ball goes in. As an experienced official, if the ball goes in, no whistle. It depends on the severity of the contact. If there was intent to, I don't know. But at that age, what kids have intent to hurt? Fourth grade. So there's a lot of things involved with officiating that go through our minds based on our training that a lot of people don't know. And the last thing I'll tell people in terms of officiating training, I've done this a long time. I do have a school called reftrainingschool.com. So if you ever want to look that up, REF, trainingschool.com. My wife and I, we launched that almost 15 years ago. What we do is recruit and train people to get into officiating, high school, and if they want to go beyond. The one thing we teach a lot of people who come through our training system is that you come into this thinking that you know what you're doing. Then you get behind the whistle, everything changes because you realize there's things to take into account like PCA. We'll talk about that another time. BW, we'll talk about that another time, which you might remember from the last segment. And then there's other things like what is it? I've forgotten what it is. Speed, rhythm, balance. So SRB. Speed, rhythm, and balance. So it depends on the speed of the player who's coming in, the defender, their speed, the rhythm, was the rhythm changed? The defender, did they change the rhythm of the dribbler or the shooter? And balance. Was the balance knocked off by the defense? And another thing, as officials, we are trained to referee the defense. A lot of people don't know what that means, and we'll talk about that in another segment. But refereeing the defense, that may mean I'll miss a travel. Or I may miss a carry dribble. Well, why can't you see it all? That's what we hear from the stands. Well, why aren't you down here doing my job so you can see it all? If you're better than me, why don't you come down here, come to my training school, and you become an official and you can see it all? And I hit a parent with that one time who was yelling at an event. I stopped and said, well, we have training here, and I just happen to have a business card. I said, here's my card. We do train people if you want to become an official. I don't want your freaking card. He knocked out of my hand. And I looked at him, I said, well, if you're better, and this was during a timeout, I said, if you think you can do it better, I can do a much better job than you. I would this and I would that. I said, well, then why don't you prove it? Come to the training, become an official, and show us. And everybody around the crowd is kind of watching this interaction, wondering what he's going to say. I could do much, you suck. I said, okay, I agree with you. From your perspective, I suck. He goes, you do. I said, I agree. The way you see me as an official, in your mind, I suck. So why don't you come to get trained and become a better official than me? Maybe you'll replace me. Maybe you'll do better than me. And then we won't have suck on the court. Take that challenge. No, you just go out there. You just need to do a better job. Now, I mean, there's probably reasons the man didn't want to do it. Maybe he's busy with some other things. Maybe he's just not interested. But I'm just looking at him. I'm thinking, I don't come to your job and yell at you and tell you you suck. And you might. but I don't have a right to come to your job and do that. What makes you think you have a right to come to my job and tell me things like that? What makes you think you have a right to come to my job and tell me that I'm bad at something that you've never been trained at? What makes you think that? And people say, well, I watched the NBA. I watched college. This is not college. This is not NBA. And by the way, those people get paid a lot more money than I do to put up with crap like this from people like you. This is fifth grade basketball. This is eighth grade basketball. And you're thinking that you watch college and you watch pro and that can be overlaid to be similar to this? Those are athletes that have been training for years to do what they do. Your kid in the eighth grade is what, 12, 13, 14 years old? Maybe 12, I don't know. I don't know the age of eighth grade here. It's somewhere in there. They've been on the earth for 12 or 13 years. 14 maybe. And you're saying be consistent. Their bodies aren't consistent. They don't even know. The kid is 6 feet tall in the eighth grade. He's an anomaly and he doesn't know how to move his body, but you want me to be consistent, but he's inconsistent. The whole team is inconsistent. The whole system of eighth graders is inconsistent, but you want me to be consistent. That makes no real sense, folks. Sit back and cheer for your team. Stop trying to tell us who go to trainings on a regular basis all summer long, I'm going to camps. And yes, officials go to camps. Just like players go to camps to get picked up by pro teams, or they go to camps to get picked up by AAU teams, or they go to camps to get picked up by travel ball teams. We go to camp during the summer to get picked up by different assigners. And yes, assigners assign us for high school. They assign us for men's leagues around the community. They assign us for college. So we have to go to different camps to get picked up on these different, what they call, I guess, rosters by these assigners. And the assigner I work for on a college level, and I work colleges like St. Francis and Trine and Manchester and Indiana Wesleyan, and schools usually within, Ohio, Northern, schools usually within about a 2-hour drive. We pay anywhere from $300 to $350 per summer to go and get seen by the clinicians at those camps and hopefully get picked up to continue to be on his service list of officials. And he's got the one assigner I'm thinking of, he's got close to 300 officials on his list of people that he uses at different colleges. And I do women's college. But you think I'm not knowledgeable enough to do an eighth grade game, a fourth grade game. Some folks, some of you out there, you got it all wrong. And it's not just about the W's, it's not just about the wins. So anyway, I just want to share a little bit of that with you guys. That story of that African-American father, that Black American father, that Negro father, that of color father, whatever you want to label him, because we, as Black people, we have so many different labels. We can't just be Americans, like some of my white friends are just Americans, but I have to be a Black American. And they say, well, no, you don't have to be. You guys call yourselves that. Really? Really? When you have to describe somebody who happens to be blessed with a suntan, more melanin in her skin, do you say that man over there, or do you say that Black man? Think about it. Do you say that woman over there, or do you say that Black woman? Especially if you're not happy with that person. That Black woman, that Black guy. So come on, it's not just on Black Americans. This race thing in America, like some of my friends that come from other countries and in sports, we have to deal with it because white Americans bring it up all the time. It's in your minds on a regular basis. And some of you are afraid of me. You're afraid of people that look like me. Why? I didn't do anything to you. Wouldn't do anything to you. I'm probably one of the safest people you could have around you because I love people. But, the race factor, the race card is something I don't mind talking about. I used to have a business doing cultural diversity workshops. I'm married to a woman who happens to be Caucasian. My first wife that I'm obviously divorced from, she's Caucasian. My kids are racially mixed between Black American, white American. Race is not an issue that I shy away from. It's part of my makeup. I'm very comfortable talking about race, as you can tell. It makes other people uncomfortable when I talk about it, but I just look at it as that's your issue. So with that, I'll sign off for the day and just thanks for letting me ramble a little bit. And if you guys ever need to get in touch with me, as I said before, you can get in touch with me through reftrainingschool.com or reftrainingschool@gmail.com. So look forward to talking to you guys again in the future, and take care of yourselves.